Tonight, watching the clock. Melburnians count the hours to the end of the world's longest lockdown.
Everyone's poised for midnight. I think it's almost going to be like a mini New Year's Eve celebration.
As businesses on the Mornington Peninsula prepare for reopening, some with excitement, others with trepidation.
Happy and nervous at the same time.
Also tonight, leaked recordings highlight the animosity between state coalition MPs. And slip sliding away. A large section of Surf Coast cliff crashes onto the beach below. Good evening, Tamara O'Dine with ABC News. It's been a long and bumpy road to get here, but we're in the final hours of Melbourne's 6th and hopefully last lockdown. But even on the last day comes a sobering reminder that COVID hasn't yet been defeated. 2,232 new cases were recorded in Victoria today, the second highest daily total since the pandemic began, and sadly there were 12 deaths. But we've officially passed a major vaccination target. Nearly 90% of people 16 and over have now had a first dose and 70.5% are fully vaccinated. That means Melbourne's lockdown and curfew will end in just under 5 hours. And as Bridget Rollison explains, millions of Melburnians are ready to go.
After the world's longest lockdown, there's finally a new dawn for Melbourne.
Everyone's poised for midnight. I think it's almost going to be like a mini New Year's Eve celebration.
Pubs and restaurants spent the day cleaning out the cobwebs as they prepare to welcome back some very thirsty guests.
Pumped. Can't wait. It's been a long time between drinks, literally.
Hang out with friends, go out for a drink and party a little bit. We've been in lockdown way too long.
Salute. Alla riapertura. Finally.
It was full steam ahead in this Italian kitchen. But with some gloomy weather predicted and most of their customers outdoors, they're worried about serving a side of rain with their pizza.
So we are all the fingers crossed for the weather to be nice and so we can accommodate also more people outside.
Getting an appointment to tame that lockdown mane won't be easy. This Richmond hairdresser is booked out until February.
We have over 1,000 people on our wait list, so we are busy on the phones. We've got half the team here today cleaning.
Mildura will also emerge from lockdown at midnight, a day earlier than planned.
Woohoo!
And this beautician won't be waiting, opening her doors just after the clock strikes 12.
I've got quite a few clients that are coming in that when I rang, they were very excited about coming in at 3 and 4 a.m.
The longest road has been journeyed in Victoria, and that long road really starts to open up tonight.
And Mr Speaker, our government has stood by those Victorians. Some 10.8 million vaccines delivered in Victoria.
Police say they're still waiting for guidance on which rules they're meant to enforce.
Our members will be coming on shift, on night shift tonight, wondering what to do for that first hour.
Victoria is paddling ahead with its reopening despite recording its second highest daily case numbers ever.
And we've seen this pattern of higher numbers reported on a Thursday for several weeks now. So this isn't entirely unexpected and may well reflect infections that were acquired over the course of the weekend.
Health authorities say the 11-week-long lockdown bought time to get the community vaccinated and warn there would have been tens of thousands of cases a day if the city hadn't shut down.
Means that we are on track to become one of the most highly vaccinated jurisdictions in the world.
But there is some alarm about reopening with thousands of active cases in the community.
There's a sense of concern, probably leading to a sense of dread. It's busy already, it's busy now, and it has been for many months, and we're expecting that with an increase in cases that could occur, with more movement of people around the Melbourne and around the state, that we're going to see a lot more cases.
Even though 70% sounds like a lot of people, it still means 30% of the 16 and overs are not fully protected, plus all the children. So that is a lot of that's millions of people that are unprotected. So that allows the virus to transmit.
But after reaching that key vaccination target, it's hoped this will be the last widespread lockdown.
Proud to be Victorian. I think we've all done really, really well.
Bridget Rollison joins us from Brunswick, where many restaurants are busy prepping. Bridget, what's happening where you are?
Well, preparations are in full swing here at Rumi tonight. We've got chefs prepping away, they're cooking away in the kitchen there as they prepare to welcome 20 guests for a Middle Eastern midnight feast. Now, these restaurant owners understand that Melburnians have done it tough throughout these lockdowns and their mental health has suffered. So tonight they'll be donating all of their proceeds to Beyond Blue. Now, Rumi is just one of several businesses that will be opening as soon as the clock strikes 12, and Tam, the countdown is well and truly on.
Bridget, on another issue, we understand the government's poised to make an announcement about hotel quarantine. What more can you tell us about that one?
Well, the ABC understands that Victoria is planning to scrap all quarantine requirements for international arrivals. So that means all fully vaccinated people coming in from overseas to Victoria won't have to do any quarantine, either in home or hotel quarantine, if they're fully vaccinated and if they have a negative test. Now, this comes after New South Wales announced exactly the same thing last week, and we're expecting the Premier might have more to say on this tomorrow, but the changes are expected to come into force on November 1. Tam?
Bridget Rollerson, thank you. So, what are the new freedoms and who can enjoy them? Mary Gearan takes us through exactly what happens from 11:59 tonight.
The end of lockdown heralds the scrapping of the curfew, and you won't need a reason to leave home. But there's a catch. Only fully vaccinated Melburnians will be able to enjoy all the new freedoms. If you're double dosed, you're allowed to have 10 people in your home. 15 people can gather outdoors, so some training for community sport can resume. You can go to the pub for a beer or eat out at a restaurant. Hairdressers and beauty salons can reopen, and you'll be able to swim laps at your local outdoor pool. But there will be density limits, and masks are still mandatory, both indoors and outdoors, with the usual exceptions. Weddings can be held with 20 fully vaccinated people allowed indoors and 50 outdoors. Funerals have the same limits. Although lockdown is over, Melburnians can't visit regional Victoria just yet, and regional Victorians can't go to Melbourne. The travel ban will be lifted when 80% of eligible Victorians are fully vaccinated.
Although banned from regional Victoria, Melburnians can visit the Mornington Peninsula, which is considered part of the metro area. Businesses are busy getting ready for an influx of tourists there, but not everyone's happy.
It seems a glass of wine with friends is first on the list for many lockdown-weary Victorians.
Phone calls non-stop all day.
Staff at Paringa Estate in Red Hill are getting ready to throw open the doors after months of lockdown.
It's been a really lonely time out here on the estate, and to have people come back and have a glass of wine amongst the vines is really exciting for us.
It's much the same for this Mornington restaurant.
We've been inundated with phone calls and emails regarding bookings, dining in, vaccination policy, as well as when can events start. So very, very busy.
Their event space will sit idle for now, but they're looking forward to welcoming back diners from tomorrow.
Happy and nervous at the same time.
And the locals agree.
We welcome them. They're great for the shops.
I think that's probably about time. I think we've been locked in for probably long enough.
While there's a buzz of excitement in the air along the peninsula, some remain a little nervous about hordes of Melburnians flocking to the coast.
A lot of people are infected already. We wouldn't like them to come so soon, maybe later on, next year.
And the vaccine mandate is causing some headaches.
We're getting a lot of inquiries about whether single-dose vaccinated people are allowed in, and based on the mandate, they are unable to.
Under reopening rules, business owners are responsible for making sure only fully vaccinated customers are allowed in.
I guess we're a little bit nervous about how we're going to manage that disappointment to people wanting to come to the venue.
There might be some teething problems, but for businesses so heavily reliant on tourism, it's a small price to pay.
Definitely going to take some time, and we just don't want to put too much pressure on our staff as well, and we want to make sure it's a smooth sort of process.
It's been a bumpy ride, but the train to freedom is gathering momentum. Eden Hennanen, ABC News, Mornington.
There are some concerns over what the added mobility post-lockdown might mean for infections. But as our analyst Casey Briggs explains, the data suggests some have already taken some early liberties.
We've seen a lot of road bumps in the Victorian case numbers in recent weeks, but there is a pattern that does now look to be emerging. That first day we saw a very big spike in case numbers. That was a Thursday. This day last week we saw another spike in case numbers, also a Thursday, and today it's Thursday and another big spike. It looks like there's a lot of virus transmission occurring on the weekends in Victoria that's becoming known in the case numbers come Thursday. And the overall trend line in the state, well, it's yet to turn downward firmly, and it wasn't that long ago there was quite a lot of concern about opening up states that were still recording thousands of cases a day. There's significant pressure on the hospital system still as well. People admitted to hospital in Victoria in the high 700s. So you can see that there's an argument for lockdowns to be extended just a little bit longer. But as vaccination rates grow very quickly, you also get the sense that the social licence for lockdowns is degrading and fast. That's backed up by mobility data, like this data from Google, which suggests that visits to retail and recreation venues across Victoria have been slowly but steadily increasing now for a little while. Similarly, for workplace visits, which are growing, but not to quite the same extent as retail and recreation. People are tired and they're fed up with lockdowns. And if it is the case that significant numbers of people just aren't following the lockdown at the moment, well, it might turn out to be the case that the changes that come into effect tomorrow look like more of a change on paper than they actually are in reality. The reproduction number in Victoria, that is a bit higher now than the reproduction number was in New South Wales when that state came out of lockdown. And it means Victoria does have less wiggle room, less room for error as it emerges and the virus is permitted to start circulating through the community a bit more freely. But the vaccination coverage, it is growing very quickly, and 90% of the 16+ population of Victoria should be double dosed around about the end of November.
Staff at Gippsland's largest hospital say they feel unsafe in their workplace because of the way a recent COVID case there was handled. The maternity ward at Latrobe Regional Hospital was named a Tier 1 exposure site late last month after a patient tested positive. And it's triggered concern among nurses who say the proper protocols weren't followed.
When Courtney Stewart's son Milo arrived last week, he was in a hurry.
I had to hop in the ambulance and he was born in the ambulance.
But it was an earlier trip to Latrobe Regional Hospital that is raising concerns among staff. On the 29th of September, Miss Stewart attended the maternity ward after she started having contractions. She was sent home. But late the next day, she found out from her cousin that the maternity ward was a coronavirus exposure site.
I rang the hospital to ask what I should do next. And they said I should have got a text and I hadn't got one.
She was required to isolate for the last 2 weeks of her pregnancy.
I was stressed and it just made me more anxious about if I had been exposed.
After the exposure was announced, the hospital's nurses raised their concerns with management, accusing Latrobe Regional Health of not providing adequate personal protection equipment for staff, failing to have parts of the hospital cleaned to the department's standards, and failing to notify some staff for more than 24 hours that they'd been exposed.
One of the best things that the hospital could do was to come out and say, we managed the situation poorly, and this is what we've learned.
But the hospital says it's met the Department of Health's requirements around PPE and cleanliness.
People's levels of anxiety are really high at the moment, and so that's why we are doing all we can to support our staff through this pandemic.
WorkSafe has issued the hospital with 3 improvement notices relating to cleaning and airflow in the maternity ward. The hospital says it will make the improvements to the cleaning.
There's always areas where we can improve our services, and our cleaning staff have taken on the recommendations from WorkSafe.
The hospital says the fact none of its staff contracted COVID was proof its protocols were adequate. Jared Whittaker, ABC News, Traralgon.
A leaked recording of a fiery, expletive-laden exchange at a Liberal Party room meeting has highlighted ugly division within the party over a ban on gay conversion therapies. As our state political reporter Richard Willingham explains, the fact the meeting was even recorded shows a level of mistrust inside Matthew Guy's opposition at a time when the government is on the ropes.
This is the first public display of division since Matthew Guy rolled Michael O'Brien, showing some wounds are yet to heal. The blow-up was prompted by Mr Guy and his Shadow Minister James Newbury's decision, without consultation, to renege on a promise to make amendments to a gay conversion bill if it won next year's state election. This lack of process has angered some senior MPs, including the Nationals leader, Peter Walsh.
From a Nationals point of view, we will not be supporting change on his position, and you can go and get simple as that.
One of the criticisms of Michael O'Brien as leader was a lack of consultation with others in the coalition. The hypocrisy is not lost on some MPs. Party meetings of any stripe can be willing. They are sacrosanct, and the fact it was taped and leaked to The Age exposes some deep animosity. In the meeting, outspoken backbencher Bernie Finn warned that people would not be able to trust the party if it ditched its policy.
What do we say to them? We gave the bill, Bernie. We gave commitment. Tim, you might not care about commitment, but a lot of us do. I can read you, fool. Read the thing. It's got you are a
Opposition MPs are despairing about this leak, saying it's a betrayal of trust. There's also concern about the message it sends to the community about the coalition's priorities at a time when Victorians are struggling with a crippled economy and ongoing restrictions. Matthew Guy has made inroads since taking over as leader. He's been more measured and has tried to be constructive at a time when the government has multiple struggles. But there's still some resentment. And nearly every day the opposition has been in front of the camera to hold the government to account. But today they weren't available.
Lawyers for Malka Leifer, the ultra-Orthodox school principal, have told a court they're considering getting expert advice on her fitness to stand trial on child sex abuse charges. Ms Leifer appeared today in the county court where she's been ordered to stand trial on 70 charges dating back to her time as the principal of the Adas Israel school in Elstonwick. The 55-year-old has always denied the allegations. She'll return to court in March. The Prime Minister has been accused of running a protection racket for Christian Porter after the government blocked a parliamentary probe into who covered the legal costs of the former Attorney-General. But Scott Morrison says a higher principle is in play, ensuring there are clear rules as to how politicians' defamation cases are funded. Here's political editor Andrew Probyn.
Prime Minister Scott Morrison joins us now in Canberra.
Morning telly has a way of cutting through.
I mean, forget the pub test. This doesn't pass any kind of test.
The member has resigned from the cabinet, and that matter was dealt with decisively. What I'm saying here,
the Prime Minister parrying questions about who helped pay for Christian Porter's defamation action against the ABC.
The idea that he didn't know where the donations came from defies belief.
Even before the former Attorney-General discontinued the case, he was being asked who would foot the bill.
Would you rule out crowdfunding?
I'd prefer not to do that.
Instead, Mr Porter accepted money from a blind trust, donors unknown, leaving him unable to conclusively rule out a perceived conflict of interest, quitting the ministry last month.
And I have accepted his resignation.
In giving precedence.
Speaker of the House Tony Smith ruled yesterday the case warranted further parliamentary scrutiny, only to see the government shut down efforts to refer the case to the Privileges Committee.
I want to make sure the rules are right so the integrity is protected.
Look over here. Look at something else that is typical of this government.
The government claims it wants a broader review into crowd-funded legal action and has cited Green Senator Sarah Hanson-Young's defamation action against former Senator David Leyonhjelm. Senator Hanson-Young declared hundreds of contributors. Mr Porter could identify none.
Why is the Prime Minister running a protection racket for the member for Pearce?
If those opposite want to use the procedures of this House to smear, they'll do so, but that will reflect on them.
Labor's using this untidy affair to pressure the coalition over its long overdue promise to introduce a National Integrity Commission. We might see legislation by year's end. But the government's significantly distracted by drawn-out negotiations with the junior coalition partner over climate policy. Nationals finalising a grab bag of wishes in exchange for supporting Scott Morrison's mission towards net zero.
Oh, there's a split.
Andrew Probyn, ABC News, Canberra.
A young gunman charged over the United States' worst high school shooting could be executed for his crimes. Nicholas Cruz has pleaded guilty to murdering 17 of his former classmates and teachers in Parkland, Florida 3 years ago. The trial has put the issue of American gun violence under a rare degree of scrutiny as most gunmen die during their attacks. North America correspondent Catherine Diss reports from Washington.
In a long history of mass shootings, this was the deadliest in an American high school. Doors left unlocked and gates open. The gunman, an expelled former student, got inside undetected, armed with a legally bought semi-automatic rifle. Within 9 minutes, 14 students and 3 teachers were dead, a further 17 injured. Now 23 years old, Nicholas Cruz hung his head low as charges of murder and attempted murder were read in court.
To count 1 of the indictment, murder in the first degree of victim Luke Hoyer. How do you wish to plead? Guilty.
He repeated that plea for all 34 counts. Trembling and at times rambling, Cruz read a statement to the court.
I am very sorry for what I did, and I have to live with it every day. And that if I were to get a second chance, I will do everything in my power to try to help others.
His crime in 2018 became a rallying cry for gun control activists around the country.
Gun control! Now!
But today's admission gave little comfort to the victims' families.
We should want people who commit heinous acts like mass shootings to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
The shooting sparked a nationwide student movement calling for tighter gun control. They brought their battle to the Capitol, but several years on and many of their demands at a federal level remain stalled in partisan political battles. Underpinning how this country's deep divisions continue to stymie change, even when young lives are lost. Cruz's trial, to start in January, is one of the rare cases where a mass shooter will live to see justice be served. Catherine Diss, ABC News, Washington.
Back home now, and police investigating the disappearance of a 4-year-old girl from a campsite in remote Western Australia say they now believe she was abducted. Cleo Smith was last seen early on Saturday morning in her parents' tent at the Blowholes campsite about 1,000 kilometres north of Perth. An extensive air, land and sea search over 6 days has so far failed to find any trace of her. The WA government is now offering a $1 million reward for information which leads to Cleo being found or an arrest being made.
Someone in our community knows what happened to Cleo. Someone has the knowledge that can help. And now there's a million reasons why that you need to come forward.
Police have also issued a nationwide appeal for information because they can't rule out the possibility the child has been taken interstate. To finance now, and shares in the troubled Chinese property developer Evergrande resumed trading in Hong Kong today, falling sharply, while Bitcoin hit a new record high. Here's Alan Kohler.
Well, Evergrande ran onto the field today after a 17-day spell on the bench and dropped 10% to $2.63 Hong Kong, which is worth 45 cents Australian. The surprise, perhaps, is that there are any buyers at all at this price, which is equivalent to a value for the company of 6.6 billion Australian dollars. But there's an optimist born every minute, I guess. On a related matter, Bitcoin is now changing hands for a record high $65,000 US a piece, or 86,000 Australian dollars. So 1 Bitcoin will now buy you a very nice car. The share market was flat today. Elmo's software and audio pixels went up a lot, but most of the heavyweights fell, like Rio, Woodside and Wesfarmers. Wall Street closed higher, but Hong Kong was probably dragged lower by Evergrande. The Australian dollar finally made it to 75 US cents, and it was all rise on commodity markets. And speaking of commodities, farmers have been doing fine lately, no matter what they grow. Wheat, cattle, canola, cotton or sugar. Global prices are on the rise all over. And finally, the Tax Office put out its annual report this week and, as always, included an estimate of what it calls the tax gap. That is the difference between what it collects and what it would collect if everyone paid what they're supposed to. It's $33.5 billion this year, and this pie chart here gives the proportions of those responsible. Just under half of it is small business. 2/3 is individuals not in business, and big companies and rich people are the least of the problem. And that's finance.
All AFL and AFLW players and staff will need to be fully vaccinated in advance of the start of the 2022 season. Under the policy released today, AFLW players will need to be fully vaccinated by mid-December, and all AFL players will have had both jabs by the 18th of February next year. The league will consider medical exemptions and will have the power to terminate a player's contract for non-compliance.
At the moment, we're collating that information, but I'm very sure the vast majority of players are already vaccinated or intending to be vaccinated. So I think we'll be talking about a small handful of players, and we'll continue to work with those players, provide them education and also health advice in relation to that.
The policy will also apply to new players, including from the upcoming AFL draft. David Warner's lean form with the bat has continued during Australia's 8-wicket loss to India in Abu Dhabi in its last warm-up game for the T20 World Cup. Warner made 1 off 7 balls after being out for a golden duck in the previous game. Steve Smith top scored with 57 as Australia finished with 5 for 152. India cruised to victory with more than 2 overs to spare, and Smith said Rohit Sharma's team deserves to be favourites for the tournament.
They're a terrific side. They've got all bases covered and some serious match winners in there. So they've obviously been playing all in these conditions for the last couple of months with IPL.
Australian leg spinner Georgia Wareham will miss the rest of the WBBL competition with a knee injury. Wareham ruptured her anterior cruciate ligament while playing for the Melbourne Renegades in yesterday's loss to the Adelaide Strikers. Recently, we brought you the story about the closure of a popular Surf Coast beach due to concerns about the unstable cliffs surrounding it. Well, it turned out to be a good decision because this morning, a large part of that cliff fell onto the beach below. The large section of cliff at Demon's Bluff in Anglesea broke off this morning, covering the beach with rocks and debris. Locals reported a huge boom like a mine blast just after 7 o'clock and saw a cloud of dust rising as the section of cliff gave way. Authorities have been watching cracks in the cliff grow over the past few years and earlier this month issued a warning for people to stay away from the area. It's believed recent heavy rains caused the landslide. Time for the weather now. Here's Paul Higgins.
Sam, it might have been a cloudy day today, but it did make for a stunning sunrise. We had a lot of good photos. Thank you for sending them all in. This is just one of them, of course. Today was also our warmest day since early in September here in Melbourne. Not too many places dipped below 10 degrees this morning, but it did get down to 1 at Mount Hotham. Plenty of cloud across the state today, with some sunny breaks in our west and our north this afternoon, and even a few showers in far east Gippsland, a couple of millimetres falling at Mallacoota. As high as 32 degrees today, that was at Mildura, Oyen and nearby Walpiup, but only 16 degrees down at Wilson's Prom. We reached 25.8 degrees at 2:58 p.m. in Melbourne City, a couple of bonus degrees on the forecast, not complaining about that. 3 hours and 32 minutes from lockdown mostly ending, it's 23 degrees outside. Thunderstorms once again hit Queensland's southeast today, although mostly inland from the coast. A scorching 43 degrees in Tennant Creek, Northern Territory. That is an October record, beating the previous record set only yesterday and the day before that. Now, we have a trough that's slowly clearing away from Victoria. Another trough is now developing over Western Victoria. Now, that trough will slowly cross the state tomorrow, and we will have cooler southwesterly winds over the weekend. Tomorrow, showers will spread from the west across Victoria as well, and we'll take a closer look at that shortly. Brisbane's in for more showers and thunderstorms. In Hobart, afternoon showers. Dry in Perth, Adelaide, Canberra and also in Sydney. Well, back home, a shower or two in the southwest tonight. It should be dry in the morning, then showers will develop mostly here in the west during the afternoon, and later tomorrow night into early on Saturday, we'll have this band of rain over central parts moving into our east Saturday morning. Cooler in the southwest with southerly winds coming in early in the day. It should be dry in the far northwest with sunny breaks. The chance of thunderstorms in the afternoon, especially over central parts, and cooler west to southwesterly winds will spread from the west. On the bay, a variable wind at 10 knots, becoming southerly at 15 to 20 knots in the afternoon. Strong winds on the East Gippsland coast. Well, mild in Melbourne tonight and up to 26 tomorrow, the same as it was today. It should be mostly sunny in the morning. There's the chance of a light shower or thunderstorm from mid-afternoon and then rain from late tomorrow night. 26 degrees with a north wind before an afternoon cool change. Saturday will be wet at times. Showers, 8 to 15 millimetres of rain, a southwest wind, 17. 16 Sunday as that southwesterly wind continues and a few showers on the way. Monday, a shower or two, but then a big jump to 21 Tuesday and 27 Wednesday and Thursday, Tam.
Thanks, Paul. That's it for this evening's bulletin. Laura Tingle's up next.